The ominous black sedan pulled up to the curb, tires crunching on the freshly fallen snow. Two men in dark suits stepped out, their expressions grim. Jack watched them from his living room window, his heart pounding. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading. Moments later, a sharp knock echoed through the house. Jack took a deep breath and opened the door, coming face to face with the two men. "Mr. Whitaker," one of them said, flashing a badge. "I'm Officer Ramsey, and this is Officer Davids. We have a warrant to search your property." Jack's stomach twisted. "A warrant? What is this about?" "You've been cited by the Homeowners Association for violating several bylaws," Officer Ramsey explained, his tone stern. "Specifically, the unauthorized display of holiday lights and decorations. Asterisk, the Christmas lights. Asterisk, Jack should have known this would come back to haunt him. He'd gone all out this year, covering his house in a dazzling display of twinkling lights and inflatable Santas. But the HOA had a strict policy against such extravagance. "There must be some mistake," Jack pleaded. "I followed all the rules. That's not what our records show," Officer Davids interrupted, brushing past Jack into the house. "We have orders to confiscate any unauthorized decorations." Jack watched helplessly as the two officers began tearing down his beloved display, tossing the decorations into large trash bags. This couldn't be happening. "Please, you have to understand," Jack said, his voice trembling. "Christmas is the most important time of year for my family. Those lights, they mean everything to us." Officer Ramsey paused, his expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitaker, but the HOA has made their decision. You'll need to remove all the decorations by tomorrow or face further penalties." As the officers carried the last of the bags to their car, Jack felt a sinking despair. His children would be heartbroken. This was their favorite time of year, and now it was all being taken away. But then, a spark of defiance ignited within him. Asterisk no. Asterisk, he refused to let the HOA ruin their Christmas. Gripping the doorframe, he made a vow. "You may have taken my lights, but you'll never take our holiday spirit." The next morning, Jack woke to the sound of commotion outside. Peering through the window, he was greeted by an astounding sight. His entire neighborhood, bundled up against the cold, had gathered in front of his house. And they were asterisk cheering asterisk. Jack rushed outside, bewildered. "What's going on?" His neighbor, Mrs. Wilkins, approached him, her face beaming. "Jack, we heard about what happened with the HOA. We couldn't just sit by and let them ruin Christmas for your family." She gestured to the crowd, and Jack's eyes widened as he took in the scene. Dozens of people, young and old, held up their own Christmas decorations, ready to adorn Jack's home. "We're here to show the HOA that they can't control how we celebrate the holidays," Mrs. Wilkins continued. "This is asterisk our asterisk neighborhood, and we stand with you, Jack." Tears welled in Jack's eyes as the crowd erupted in cheers. In that moment, he knew that the HOA had met its match. This was more than just a battle over Christmas lights. It was a fight for the soul of their community. And Jack was determined to win. The crowd swarmed around Jack's house, buzzing with energy and determination. Within minutes, the once bare lawn was transformed into a dazzling winter wonderland, adorned with twinkling lights, inflatable Santas, and glowing snowmen. As Jack watched in awe, Mrs. Wilkins approached him, a proud smile on her face. "We're not going to let the HOA bully us, Jack. This is our neighborhood, and we're going to fight for it." Jack nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude and resolve. "Thank you, all of you. This means the world to my family." Just then, a black SUV pulled up, and two well-dressed men stepped out, the same officers from the day before. They strode towards the house, their expressions stern. "Mr. Whitaker, what is the meaning of this?" Officer Ramsey demanded. "You were ordered to remove all unauthorized decorations." Jack squared his shoulders, unwavering. I'm sorry, officer, but this isn't just my display anymore. It belongs to the entire neighborhood. We're not going to let the HOA ruin our Christmas. The officer's eyes narrowed. This is a clear violation of HOA bylaws. You leave us no choice but to take. But before he could finish, a voice rang out from the crowd. Not so fast, officer. Jack turned to see a tall, well-dressed man pushing through the throng of neighbors. It was Mr. Erickson, the president of the HOA. This display may violate our bylaws, but it seems the residents of this community have spoken. Erickson said, his tone carefully measured. And as the representative of the HOA, I'm here to listen. The officers exchanged a glance, visibly uncertain. Jack felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could win this fight. So, what do you propose, Mr. Whitaker? Erickson asked, fixing Jack with a piercing gaze. Jack took a deep breath, knowing that this was his chance to stand up to the corrupt HOA. I propose that we work together to create new bylaws that truly reflect the values of our community. One that celebrates our diversity and allows us to express our holiday spirit freely. Erickson considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. I'm willing to hear your suggestions. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Jack knew that this was just the beginning of a long and hard-fought battle. But with his neighbors by his side, he was ready to take on the HOA and win back the soul of their community. The HOA meeting was tense, the air thick with unspoken tension. Jack sat at the long, polished table, surrounded by the members of the Homeowners Association, a veritable who's who of the neighborhood's elite. At the head of the table, Mr. Erickson, the HOA president, cleared his throat. Thank you all for being here today. As you know, we've called this emergency meeting to address the situation at the Whitaker residence. Jack felt every eye in the room turn towards him, a mixture of curiosity and disdain in their expressions. Mr. Whitaker, Erickson continued, you've proposed some rather radical changes to our bylaws. Changes that would undermine the very purpose of the HOA. Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself. With all due respect, Mr. Erickson, the purpose of the HOA should be to serve the community, not control it. These bylaws you've put in place, they're more about power and conformity than they are about maintaining property values or ensuring a cohesive neighborhood. A murmur rippled through the room, and Jack could see the anger and unease on the faces of the HOA members. That's a rather bold accusation, Mr. Whitaker, Erickson said, his voice dripping with disdain. The HOA exists to protect the integrity of our community. Your stunt with the Christmas decorations was a clear violation of our rules. Rules that the majority of the neighborhood disagrees with, Jack countered. We're not asking for anarchy, Mr. Erickson. We're simply asking for a little flexibility, a little humanity in how these bylaws are enforced. Erickson's eyes narrowed. And what exactly are you proposing? Jack leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. I propose that we form a community council made up of elected representatives from across the neighborhood. This council will have a voice in shaping the HOA's policies and bylaws, ensuring that they reflect the desires and values of the people who actually live here. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, some shouting in support, others in outrage. Erickson raised his hand, silencing the crowd. This is a rather radical idea, Mr. Whitaker, one that would significantly undermine the authority of the HOA. Jack nodded. I understand your concerns, Mr. Erickson. But the truth is, the HOA has become little more than a tool for you and your allies to maintain control over this community, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. The tension in the room was palpable, the air electric with the promise of a battle to come. Jack knew that he had drawn a line in the sand and that the fight for the soul of their neighborhood was just beginning. In the days that followed the tense HOA meeting, Jack threw himself into the task of forming the community council. He went door to door, talking to his neighbors and rallying support for the cause. To his surprise, the response was overwhelming. Residents from all walks of life, young families, retirees, even some of the HOA members themselves, eagerly signed up to be part of the grassroots movement. "We're tired of being pushed around by the HOA," one elderly woman told Jack, her eyes filled with determination. "It's time we took back control of our neighborhood." Jack nodded, feeling a surge of pride and resolve. "That's exactly why we're doing this. To give a voice to everyone in the community, not just the privileged few." As the council took shape, Jack knew he had to tread carefully. The HOA would undoubtedly try to undermine their efforts, and he needed to ensure that the council was seen as a legitimate and representative body. To that end, he organized a series of town hall meetings, inviting all residents to come and share their concerns and ideas. The turnout was staggering, with hundreds of people filling the community center, eager to have their voices heard. "The HOA has been running roughshod over us for years," one young mother said, her voice trembling with emotion. "They've imposed ridiculous rules, fined us for minor infractions, and made it impossible for us to enjoy our own homes." A chorus of cheers and applause erupted, and Jack knew that the tide was turning. But as the council began to take shape, Jack soon realized that the HOA was not going to go down without a fight. Erickson and his allies launched a relentless smear campaign, painting the community council as a group of disgruntled troublemakers who were trying to undermine the very fabric of the neighborhood. "This council is nothing more than a reckless attempt to usurp the authority of the HOA," Erickson declared in a scathing letter to the local newspaper. "We will not allow a small group of agitators to dictate the future of our community." Jack responded with a fiery op-ed of his own, laying out the council's vision for a more inclusive and democratic neighborhood. "The HOA has lost touch with the people it's supposed to serve," he wrote. "It's time for a change, and the community council is here to make that change a reality." As the battle lines were drawn, Jack knew that the stakes were higher than ever. This was no longer just about Christmas lights or holiday decorations. It was a fight for the very soul of their community, and he was determined to win. The tension in the neighborhood was palpable as the battle between the HOA and the community council raged on. Jack could feel the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders, but he refused to back down. In the face of Erickson's relentless smear campaign, Jack and the council members worked tirelessly to rally the support of their neighbors. They organized town hall meetings, canvassed the streets, and flooded social media with their message of community empowerment. "The HOA has had its way for far too long," Jack declared at one impassioned gathering. "It's time we take back control of our neighborhood and build the kind of community we all deserve." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Jack felt a surge of hope. But just as the council was gaining momentum, the HOA struck back with a vengeance. First, they filed a series of lawsuits alleging that the council was operating illegally and that its members were in violation of various bylaws. Jack and his team scrambled to mount a defense, but the legal battle was draining their resources and energy. "They're trying to bury us in paperwork and red tape," one council member lamented. "It's a classic HOA tactic to wear us down and force us to give up." But Jack was determined not to let that happen. He rallied the community, organizing a massive fundraising drive to support the council's legal defense. Neighbors came together, posting bake sales, car washes, and other events to raise the necessary funds. The HOA, undeterred, then turned to more underhanded tactics. They began targeting individual council members, threatening them with fines and penalties if they continued to defy the HOA's authority. Some, fearful of the consequences, even resigned from the council, leaving Jack and the remaining members to pick up the pieces. "They're trying to divide and conquer," Jack said, his voice laced with frustration. "But we can't let them win. We have to stick together, no matter what they throw at us." As the battle raged on, Jack found himself constantly on the defensive, struggling to keep the council afloat and maintain the support of the community. The HOA's relentless attacks were taking a toll, and he could see the weariness in the faces of his fellow council members. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a glimmer of light appeared on the horizon. A young, ambitious lawyer reached out to Jack, offering to take on the council's legal defense pro bono. "I believe in what you're doing," the lawyer said, a determined gleam in her eye. "And I'm not going to let the HOA bully you out of the fight." With this new ally on their side, Jack and the council members felt a surge of renewed energy and determination. They were in it for the long haul, and they were not going to back down without a fight. The battle lines had been drawn, and the stakes had never been higher. As the legal battle raged on, Jack and the community council knew they needed to take their fight to the next level. The HOA was playing dirty, using every trick in the book to undermine their efforts and maintain its stranglehold on the neighborhood. But Jack was determined not to be intimidated. He knew that the only way to truly win this fight was to go straight to the heart of the HOA's power, its members. So he gathered the council together and laid out his bold plan. "We need to take the fight directly to the HOA," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "We need to show them that the entire community is united against their corrupt regime." The council members exchanged nervous glances, but they could see the fire in Jack's eyes. They knew that they had come too far to back down now. "What do you have in mind?" one of the council members asked. Jack leaned forward, a steely glint in his gaze. "We're going to hold a massive protest, the entire neighborhood, coming together to demand the dissolution of the HOA and the creation of a truly democratic community council." The plan was bold, audacious, and more than a little risky. But as Jack laid out the details, the council members began to see the genius in his strategy. "If we can get the entire community to come out and show their support," Jack said, "the HOA won't be able to ignore us. They'll have no choice but to listen to the will of the people." And so, the wheels were set in motion. Jack and the council members went door to door, rallying the neighborhood and spreading the word about the upcoming protest. The response was overwhelming. People were hungry for change, tired of the HOA's heavy-handed tactics, and ready to take a stand. On the day of the protest, the streets were packed with hundreds of residents, young and old, all united in their desire for a new, more inclusive future. Jack stood at the heart of the crowd, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. As the protest began, the council members took turns addressing the crowd, laying out their vision for a reinvented neighborhood. "We're not just fighting for the right to display our holiday decorations," Jack declared, his voice ringing out over the sea of cheering faces. "We're fighting for the very soul of our community." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, and Jack knew that they had struck a chord. But as he scanned the crowd, he caught sight of a familiar face. Erickson, the HOA president, standing at the edge of the protest with a grim expression on his face. Jack knew that this was a critical moment. The HOA could no longer ignore the will of the people, and he was determined to seize this opportunity to bring about the change they had been fighting for. The battle lines had been drawn, and the fate of the neighborhood hung in the balance. As the massive protest filled the streets, Jack could feel the tension crackling in the air. The air was electric with the energy of the crowd, their voices raised in a chorus of defiance against the HOA's tyrannical rule. And at the heart of it all stood Erickson, the HOA president, his face a mask of barely concealed rage. Jack knew that this was a critical moment. The HOA could no longer ignore the will of the people, and he was determined to seize this opportunity to bring about the change they had been fighting for. Stepping forward, Jack raised his hand, silencing the crowd. "Erickson," he called out, his voice ringing with authority. "The people have spoken. It's time to dismantle the HOA and hand over control of this community to the elected council." Erickson's lips curled into a sneer. "You think a few hundred protesters can dictate the future of this neighborhood? The HOA has been the guiding force here for decades, and we have no intention of relinquishing that power." The crowd erupted into a chorus of boos and jeers, their anger palpable. But Erickson remained unfazed, his gaze fixed on Jack with a chilling intensity. "This is our community, Whitaker," he snarled, "and we'll do whatever it takes to protect it." Suddenly, a commotion broke out at the edge of the crowd, and Jack turned to see a group of burly, uniformed men pushing their way through the throng. His heart sank as he realized they were security guards, hired by the HOA to quell the protest. "Everyone, remain calm," Jack shouted, trying to defuse the situation. "We are exercising our right to peaceful assembly. There's no need for—" But his words were cut off as the guards began to forcibly disperse the crowd, pushing and shoving the residents with brutal efficiency. Jack watched in horror as his neighbors, his friends, were manhandled and dragged away. This was no longer just a fight for the future of the community. It was a fight for their very freedom. Steeling his resolve, Jack stepped forward, placing himself between the guards and the crowd. "Stop this madness, Erickson," he shouted. "These are our neighbors, our families. You can't just—" But before he could finish, a guard grabbed him, twisting his arm behind his back. Jack cried out in pain, his heart racing as he realized that the HOA was willing to go to any lengths to maintain its stranglehold on the community. In the chaos, Jack caught a glimpse of Erickson, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. The HOA president had won this round, but Jack knew that the fight was far from over. As he was led away, his mind raced with a single determined thought. He would not give up. He would not let the HOA win. This was a fight for the very soul of their community, and he was prepared to go to the ends of the earth to protect it. The battle lines had been drawn, and the stakes had never been higher. Bruised and battered, Jack found himself in a dimly lit conference room, face to face with Erickson and the rest of the HOA board. The air was thick with tension, and Jack could feel the weight of his situation pressing down on him. "So, Mr. Whitaker," Erickson began, his voice dripping with contempt, "you seem to have a real problem with authority." Jack held his gaze, refusing to be cowed. "I have a problem with corruption and abuse of power, Erickson. And that's exactly what the HOA has become." Erickson's lips curled into a sneer. "You think you can just waltz in and dismantle an institution that's been the backbone of this community for decades? You're delusional." Jack leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "The people have spoken, Erickson. They want change, and they're willing to fight for it. You can't ignore their voices forever." "Oh, but we can," Erickson retorted, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "We have the power, the resources, and the influence to crush your little rebellion. And that's exactly what we're going to do." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. The HOA was clearly prepared to go to any lengths to maintain its grip on the community, but he refused to back down. "You can try to silence us, Erickson, but you'll never break our spirit," Jack said, his voice firm. "The people of this neighborhood are united, and they won't stop fighting until they've taken back control of their lives." Erickson let out a cold, mirthless laugh. "We'll see about that, Whitaker. In the meantime, you and your precious counsel are hereby banned from the community. If you so much as set foot in this neighborhood again, you'll be arrested for trespassing." Jack's heart sank, but he refused to show his fear. "This isn't over, Erickson. Not by a long shot." As he was escorted out of the building, Jack's mind raced with 1,000 different thoughts. The HOA had won this round, but he knew that the fight was far from over. He had to find a way to rally the community, to reignite the spark of resistance that had burned so brightly. But even as he walked away, a small glimmer of hope began to take root in his heart. He knew that the people of this neighborhood were strong, resilient, and unwilling to give up without a fight. And with their support, he was determined to bring down the corrupt HOA regime, no matter what it took. The final showdown was coming, and Jack was ready to put everything on the line to protect the soul of his community.